Hello and welcome to Punctuating and Formatting, a language arts C experience. I'm your host today, April Willis. You may remember me of Gatsby fame. Today we will be very excitingly talking about punctuating and formatting. But first, a little background. The rest of the school year, we will be working up to the goal of producing a short story, which is both just an interesting little factoid to pull out about yourself. Hey, I've written a short story, and a life skill that can be pulled out as not exactly a party trick, but as a party trick adjacent trick for the rest of your life. I can write a story. I can keep children entertained for about 15 minutes if need be. We are starting, however, with the boring stuff, punctuating and formatting, or alternatively, we are starting with the most exciting part. It depends on your point of view and your temperament, to be frankly honest. All right, to begin. So, you should have a handout that you should have received with your homework. It should have some fill in the blanks. So we're going to go over the fill in the blanks as we go. So, dialogue punctuation rules. So we're starting with dialogue punctuation rules just because it is the trickiest aspect of punctuation and grammar that is in stories. Most other punctuation and grammar things in general are going to apply whether you're writing a research paper, which I know you did last semester, or you are writing a story. However, research papers don't have dialogue, stories do. So we are going to be focusing briefly on some common mistakes that people make with punctuation and some things just to keep in mind. If you already know all of this, then rejoice, you have been gifted an easy week before spring break. If you don't know this, then this should get you up to speed. All right, number 1, punctuation goes inside the quotation marks. I have a couple of examples on each slide, so I'm going to go ahead and read them aloud. So number 1, do you know the Muffin Man? He asked. She said, I do not know the Muffin Man. Are you sure, said the Muffin Man, that you don't know him? All right. So let's take a look at these sentences first of all. So punctuation goes inside the quotation marks is the rule. In the first sentence, we have put the question mark in the question, do you know the Muffin Man, inside the quotation marks. But you will notice that the next word, he, is not capitalized. This is one sentence. Do you know the Muffin Man, he asked. However, since what he is asking is a question, we are adding a question mark. The question mark is part of the quote because it is a question. It goes inside the quotation marks. All right, next example. She said, I do not know the Muffin Man. She said, comma. The comma is connecting, she said, to the quote that follows it. It is part of the dialogue tag. Now, dialogue tag is a common phrase that we'll be using for the rest of this class. She said, he asked, said the Muffin Man. These are dialogue tags. It's a bit of storytelling jargon here. I do not know the Muffin Man. Period, then the end quotation marks. The end of the sentence is marked with a period. It goes inside the quotation marks. All right, following sentence, are you sure, comma, quotation mark. So you can see the sentence is not finished, are you sure? And it has the comma and the quotation marks afterwards. Said the Muffin Man, comma, connecting it to the next bit. That you don't know him, question mark, and then end quotation. So all of the punctuation that is connected to the quotes goes inside the quotation marks. All right, next slide. Number 2. Start a new paragraph every time the speaker changes. This is a very common mistake that people make. This is a fairly modern rule in formatting scenes, narrative scenes. So if you've ever read the King James Bible, if you read the old-fashioned King James Bible, there is no quotation marks and people just say things in the middle of paragraphs. In modern writing, we use quotation marks to set aside quotes. And we also make a new paragraph every time someone talks. So this is a dialogue here. It's going back and forth again. So sentence 1. Wow, I love going to football games, Marcus exclaimed. Deidre shook her head. Of course you do. You grew up playing the game. I love going to the games, Carl said, and I didn't grow up with it. I just like the atmosphere. So we have started a new paragraph every time someone talked. We have Marcus, we have Deidre, and we have Carl. Marcus gets his own paragraph. Deidre gets her own paragraph. Carl gets his own paragraph. And you will notice once again, all of the punctuation in the quotes is inside the quotation marks. I think that's fairly self-explanatory. Just make sure, also as a note, Deidre shook her head is not a dialogue tag. Marcus exclaimed is a dialogue tag. Carl said is a dialogue tag. Deidre's comment actually doesn't have a dialogue tag, but we are saying Deidre shook her head. That action of hers starts the paragraph, and then we have her talk. And so that kind of tells the reader who is talking. Who is talking? Deidre is talking, because her action is connected to that. It's a common mistake I see in writing that hasn't been edited by a professional copy editor, is that people will sometimes connect an action that one person took. Character A did such and such, and character B said such and such. Those should be two separate paragraphs. You need to start a new paragraph every time someone new speaks. Even if Deidre was reacting and not saying anything, she would get her own paragraph there before anyone else talked. All right, next slide. Number 3. Use dashes and ellipses to cut sentences off. Chris tapped his water bottle against his leg, a nervous tick. I've just kind of added that as an aside. That's why it's in parentheses. This is not important, but I'm just explaining. Have you ever... No, Liz said, cutting him off. Actually watch Star Wars? Chris finished stubbornly. Or do you just think it's annoying because all the fans are? So as you can see, we have used, this is an M dash, the long dash. It is now showing that Chris's sentence was interrupted. He is cut off after the word ever. Have you ever? And then the rest of his sentence is actually watched Star Wars. So what Chris actually said is, have you ever actually watched Star Wars? With Liz interjecting in the middle there. So we've used a dash at the end of ever to show he's been cut off. And then a dash at the beginning of actually to show that this sentence is actually connected to Chris's sentence before. So that is cutting off the sentence right in the middle. We are now doing that. If he does not finish his first sentence and just starts a new one, you wouldn't use a dash at the end of that. So if Liz interrupted him, so he said, have you ever? And Liz said, no, cutting him off. And then he said, instead of actually watch Star Wars, which is the end of his original sentence, if he had said instead, well, okay then, like he was offended that she had cut him off, then his sentence, well, okay then, would be capitalized. There would be no dashes because it's a new sentence. All right, next little grouping. Do you ever think... ... Yes. Riley trailed off. Think what? I asked, hoping that he'd trust me enough to continue. He shook his head. Never mind. So, as you can see on this one, the ellipse there, the ... after do you ever think, is showing that Riley is trailing off. He's not finishing his sentence. The narrator, is not interrupting him. They are waiting for him to continue. He doesn't continue, so they prompt him with, think what? But he shakes his head and says, never mind instead. So the ellipsis here is showing that he is trailing off, that it's not finished, the thought isn't completed. There's a bit of silence in between there. If you remember from when you are doing research papers, using an ellipse is showing that you're cutting something out of the sentence. This is similarly used. The ellipse is showing that something has been cut out, but in the case of dialogue, it's showing that they just didn't say it. There was more to say, they stopped saying it, but they weren't cut off abruptly. A dash normally adds an abruptness, while an ellipse adds a softness to the end. Next slide. Use single quotation marks to quote within quotes. So, when you are quoting something, you use a quotation mark, right? The double quotation mark is used in North American style punctuation. But sometimes people quote other people or other things that need quotation marks in dialogue. So when you are quoting something in a quote, you are going to use a single quotation mark instead of a double quotation mark. So my examples are, do you know what he said? He called me a silly goose. Like that was a real insult. The silly goose is actually a quoting. We don't know who he's quoting, but he's quoting some man, and some man that called him a silly goose. So silly goose is in single quotation marks. If the narrator was saying he called him a silly goose, it would be in double quotation marks, but because the character is saying it, it's in single quotation marks inside their quote, which was inside double quotation marks. All right, next sentence. Have you ever heard Francesca by Hozier? It's based on Dante's Inferno. Francesca is a song title. Song titles, if you remember from punctuation, are normally inside double quotation marks, but since Francesca is being mentioned in a quotation in a dialogue, it is now in single quotation marks. All right, next slide. Number 5, don't use end quotes between paragraphs of speech. So this is when people are giving a very long speech in a dialogue, and the speech needs to be split up into multiple paragraphs. This is very common in older books. It's normally used when people are giving rousing monologues, rousing speeches, very long emotional declarations. It's not very common. They generally recommend, modern style is recommending that people generally not write long speeches. You can summarize, you can split it up with other things, but in general, they're not recommending you write long speeches, but sometimes it will come up. And when it does, we are going to put a double quotation mark at the beginning of the speech, but we have to fight. It isn't in our nature to roll over and just allow this to happen. And if not us, then who? And then the speaker continues talking, but in a new paragraph. The topic is shifted a little bit. We have a new paragraph, but it's still the same speaker, uninterrupted. So we don't end with double quotation marks after then who, because they're still talking. It hasn't finished. But to remind the reader that it's still a quotation, we're going to put the double quotation marks before the next paragraph to remind the reader that we're still reading a quote. So then they say, look, I know I haven't always been a paragon of bravery, but if even I am saying fight, then perhaps that is saying something. And then we're going to end with double quotation marks again, so we have actually finished the quote now. You can go on and on and on with this. You can do 3 paragraphs, 4 paragraphs, 5 paragraphs. You just need to start every paragraph of the speech with double quotation marks, but only end them with double quotation marks when the person has finished talking. As I said, in modern style, if you remember from literature class, we've been talking about every generation of writers has a belief of how stories should be, how they should be written, how they should sound, how plots should work, what kind of characters should you write about, how should they overcome their problems, should they overcome their problems, what problems are they dealing with. It's a matter of style, and modern styles of writing, they generally recommend that you break up long speeches with characters doing stuff like moving their hands, going around, someone asking them a question, someone reacting. Just in general, something to break it up so that it's not long paragraphs. But this is still important to know. All right, next slide. Number 6, always begin new sentences with a capital letter. All right, so Mindy tossed her hair like a mare and said, when you have finished tossing the contents of my closet all over the floor, perhaps you will have a second to hear my explanation. Would you? Dave cut off with a wordless cry of gut-deep frustration. Just listen to me. Okay, so obviously the beginning of this first sentence, Mindy, right, is capitalized, but since she's saying a complete sentence here, her sentence is, when it's quoted, it also begins with a capital letter. When you have finished. So when is also capitalized because it's the beginning of the sentence that she's saying. Again, going down to the next quote, would you, so would is capitalized, it's the beginning of the sentence. Dave, of course, is a proper noun, so his name is going to be capitalized, obviously. If it was he cut off, you would not capitalize it because it's in the middle of the sentence. So would you cut off the quote, he cut off with a wordless cry of gut-deep frustration. He would not be capitalized. It's not the beginning of a sentence. But then we have his next quote, just listen to me, complete sentence, in quotes, its first letter is capitalized, so just is capitalized. All right, so you should, after you have these rules, you're going to have a list of sentences. I've removed most of the capitalization. I've removed most of the punctuation. I've removed definitely most of the commas, or I think all of the commas. I've removed all the commas, and I have removed all the periods, exclamation points, question marks, and quotation marks. The part there that you need to do, or I recommend doing, is going ahead and using the rules that we all just talked about. Go ahead and correct those just like you would in an easy grammar worksheet. These are basically just easy grammar prompts. You're going to put in the capitals, you're going to put in all the punctuation, and these are all quotes. And if you get stuck, every single one of these quotes came from one of your previous literature readings. So if you need to go back and look to see how they did it, that's fine. If you go back and do it and you find that some of the things that you did are different from what the original writer did, that's actually okay. Now, it is possible that you made a mistake, but it's also possible that you just interpreted the dialogue differently than the original author, and that is okay. As long as you're following all the rules, it's okay to have a difference of opinion even with the original author, for the purposes of this exercise at least. All right, now we can go on to the next slide. So, when to start a new paragraph? Okay, the only rule here is you start a new paragraph when someone new talks or someone new does something. Like, you don't connect someone's actions to a spoken piece of dialogue that they did not say. That's the only rule. Someone new talks, you get a new paragraph. However, there are some guidelines to make things clear for the reader, to make things easy to read, to make reading pleasant instead of complicated. But these are all, again, we talked about different styles. These are all style ideas. But they should give you a good, if you need guidelines, these are good guidelines. In class on Tuesday, we talked about, we made a reference to the Pirates of the Caribbean. These are kind of like the Pirates Code. These are guidelines rather than hard, fast rules. I would like you to consider them. I would like you to follow them. However, some of them will apply more often than others. Some of them will be more useful than others. All right, number 1. A new character reacts or does something. A new character thinks something. A new idea enters. A new event happens. A new setting occurs. The reader needs a break from a long paragraph. All right, this one is a little subjective, but it is very difficult to read a solid wall of text. If you are describing something, for example, you are describing a beautiful forest like Tolkien. You're describing a beautiful forest, and all of the things that you are saying are descriptions of this beautiful forest. It's all on the same topic. You could just keep writing it in one giant paragraph that goes on and on and on. However, what you will find is that readers get tired of reading really long paragraphs. They might lose their place. They might get bored. They might accidentally skip a sentence or two and not even notice. So it's very useful when you have a very long description. This might happen if you're telling about the history of the place of your setting. This may happen when you're describing the setting. This may happen when you are describing the background of your characters or describing a character. It's not going to normally happen in any dialogue scene. It's normally going to be in an exposition scene. But if the reader needs a break from a long paragraph, basically if you have written a pretty chunky paragraph, if you could find a place to split it up just to give the reader's eyes a break, that would be very helpful. All right, number 7, the camera moves. Okay, so this is a Ray Bradbury suggestion. Ray Bradbury is the author of Fahrenheit 451, and so he suggested, as in movies, every time the camera angle changes, go ahead and start a new paragraph. I find this the most helpful guideline for me when I'm imagining scenes when I'm writing a story. I am always imagining the camera angles. I am blocking it like it's a play, which is I'm deciding where the actors move. Let's be the blocking theater jargon there. I'm blocking the scene. I'm choreographing the scene like it's a dance. But I'm also deciding where the camera, this metaphorical camera, is focusing. And so every time I'm moving the focus of the camera, the mental camera in my head, I'm starting a new paragraph. That's been the most helpful guideline to me. Okay, number 8. A portion of information isn't closely related to another and needs to be distanced. 9. A change in emphasis or tone is needed in a topic. If you're changing from humor to drama, if you're changing from it used to be funny and now it's scary, or vice versa, if you are changing from informational, I'm just telling you about it, to now I'm trying to influence how you feel about it, all of those are helpful to have different paragraph breaks because that kind of cues the reader in that there's a change coming. And so they're more open to the change. They're more likely to notice the change. And I'm not necessarily going to think, oh, there's a change here. This is different. But subconsciously, they're going to be prepped for that change when you do a new paragraph. Number 10. The time moves forward or backward. A description of one thing ends and something else is described. And then 12. A special effect is needed to add humor or drama. This is one of my favorite ones. I don't find it helpful. I just find it fun. Well, I guess it's helpful, but I think it's very, very effective as far as humor and drama to like especially really short paragraph changes. Like especially if you have a long paragraph and then you have like a one sentence or even a one word sentence in its own little paragraph, it can be a really effective like gut punch sentence. Go from long to short and then go back into long. It's just a 1-2 boom boom. Oh, it's great. I love it. Anyway, so you can do things like that with paragraph breaks as well. So there is a feel to a paragraph, even though you kind of associate the feeling, the tone, how something affects you more with poetry. But prose can do that sort of effect as well. All right. So this is a homework slide. Next slide. So it says pick a 1 to 2 minute long clip of a TV show or movie. First, transcribe the scene like we did in class. You weren't in class, but I'm going to talk you through it. Then take the transcription and write a scene, making sure to use proper dialogue punctuation. That's what I really want you to practice. Please flesh out the scene with actions and descriptions as well. All right. Now, this next slide is going to be my video clip that I had everyone watch in class. So I want you to pause what I'm saying in just a second. I want you to pause and go ahead and watch the clip.
In the future, entertainment will be randomly generated.
Randomly generated?
Randomly generated. What better way to achieve the unexpected? I've seen the future, Bob, and the future is autotainment. The future is now. Hi, Rusty. Hi, Ventrilomatic.
Hi, Larry. Hi, Bob.
Greetings.
Hey, those are robots.
Affirmative.
Not only that, but these guys represent the hosts of the future. Unlike us, their humor can be truly randomly generated. Right, guys?
Why did the chicken cross the road?
I don't know. Why did the chicken cross the road?
Weed eater.
Now that's funny.
That doesn't make any sense.
It's funny because it's unexpected.
Well, whatever happened to it's funny because it's true?
2 + 2 = 4 is true, but not funny. Guys?
What is the solution to the equation 2 + 2?
I don't know. What does 2 + 2 equal?
Weed eater.
That's a good one.
All right. Now that you've watched the clip, you'll notice that it's a little over a minute long. I took this clip and I made a transcription. So on these next couple slides, you're going to see the transcription that I made. I'm going to go ahead and read it out to you. But first I want to talk about a transcription. So a transcription is kind of like a script with no scene directions. It's not going to have people's movements. It's not going to tell you anything about the scene. It's just what they say. It's kind of like a recorded interview. I don't know if you've ever read an interview in a magazine or in the newspaper that is done like this. It's kind of a Vogue style interview where it's the interviewer and then the person they're interviewing and then the interviewer. So what I did is I took the clip, I had it playing on my phone. You can play it on just another screen. You can even play it on the same screen as your computer. Just it's much easier to do this with 2 different screens. And I would play about a second or two, about a sentence of talk, and I'd pause and I'd type it out really quick, and then I hit play and I'd listen to another sentence, hit pause, type it out, hit play, listen to a sentence, hit pause, type it out, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Sometimes you'll need to back up and then go again, and that's all right. So you're just going to write it out. It will ultimately need to be typed. If you handwrite faster, you can handwrite. Do not turn me in a handwritten transcription. You will need to type it up after you have handwritten it. I type faster than I write by hand, and so I did type. Okay, so in a transcription, you're going to put the character's name first, and then you're going to put what they said. So I have Larry, and then I have a colon, and then I have what he said. You'll notice I don't have any quotation marks. In this transcription, the what they said is implied by the name and then the quotation marks. Not quotation marks, the colon there, not quotation marks. So you don't need them for now. Go ahead and put in all of your other punctuation, though. So your commas, your periods, your apostrophes, your exclamation points. Go ahead and add all of that in. Don't bother with quotation marks yet. That'll come. All right, I'm going to read it to you. So, Larry, in the future, entertainment will be randomly generated. Bob, randomly generated? Larry, randomly generated. What better way to achieve the unexpected? I've seen the future, Bob, and the future is autotainment. Voiceover. The future is now. Larry. Hi, Rusty. Hi, ventrilomatic. Rusty. Hi, Larry. Hi, Bob. Ventrilomatic. Greetings. Bob. Hey, those are robots. Ventrilomatic. Affirmative. Larry. Not only that, but these guys represent the hosts of the future. Unlike us, their humor can be truly randomly generated. Right, guys? Ventrilomatic. Why did the chicken cross the road? Rusty. I don't know. Why did the chicken cross the road? Ventrilomatic. And then I have generating noises, and I went ahead and put those in little stars, which, to be honest, is, I think, more of a role play tradition. I'm not sure if that is as much in a transcription, but it really worked for me. So it's just noises that don't actually have words, but I thought were very important to understanding what was going on. So generating noises, and then I have my onomatopoeia. Ding! Weed eater. Voiceover, and then it's a laugh track being played. So I have again in those stars. Larry. Now that's funny. Bob. That doesn't make any sense. Larry. It's funny because it's unexpected. Bob. Well, whatever happened to it's funny because it's true? Larry. 2 + 2 = 4 is true, but not funny. Guys? Ventrilomatic. What is the solution to the equation 2 + 2? Rusty. I don't know. What does 2 + 2 equal? Ventrilomatic. Generating noises. Ding. Weed eater. Larry. That's a good one. So, as I said, it was a little over a minute long. It took me a little over 10 minutes to transcribe this. That's a very average transcription rate, unless you're like a professional transcriber. As I said, I type pretty fast. I also make lots of typos when I type, when I'm trying to type really fast. So I did have to go back fairly regularly and fix all of my misspellings because I made typos, and then also I went in and added a lot of the punctuation after I had typed it up, just because I was trying to go fast. All right, so that is the transcription. So far in the homework, we are picking a 1 to 2 minute clip of a TV show or movie. When you're picking your clip, I'm going to recommend that you pick something with high emotion. So an argument is going to be really fun. A meeting where people are planning something is potentially fun especially if it's like a heist film or they're otherwise planning some kind of mission. Especially if there's arguments in the planning of that. Just arguments are excellent. I think it'd probably be fun to transcribe the first proposal scene, and specifically the 2005 Pride and Prejudice. I think that would be a fun one. I don't know if that's how long that is, but in general, that kind of scene, if someone is explaining something to someone, like in this one here, That can be very useful as well. So something with a lot of back and forth, something that is going to be fun to work on a scene ultimately. Okay, so, and then we've taken our clip, we have transcribed just the dialogue, and we have made a transcription. So go ahead and clean that up, make it nice and nice. We're going to turn this in. But what you're going to do, and this is why I recommended going ahead and typing it up, you're going to copy that. You're going to hit the enter key a couple times, and you're going to paste it right in to a new page. So now you have your transcription twice. And the next step is you're going to take this transcription and you are going to turn it into a scene. It's basically a scene in a story, but you're just writing the one scene. It's not the complete story. So you're going to take this transcription and you're going to make a scene. So I'm going to go ahead and read to you what I did. And so what I focused on is I made sure that I was making all of my quotes that I had written up. I was putting them in proper dialogue punctuation. So now this is where I'm adding quotation marks, adding dialogue tags, but I'm also going to be fleshing out the scene. I'm going to be filling in what are the actors or the vegetables in this case, what are they doing? Are they frowning? What are they thinking? I'm making this into a full scene rather than just the bare bones transcription. So it's basically taking the captions on a movie and trying to recreate the scene that it was in. So I recommend watching your clip a couple times. You're probably going to watch it at least once before you start just to make sure it is something that's going to be fun to work on. You're going to watch it probably a couple times while you're making the transcription, and I'd watch it a couple times while you are now fleshing out everything else so that you're not forgetting random things in the scenery, you're not forgetting fun movements that the actors made, but you don't have to be 100% faithful to what the actors are doing. You can imagine what the actors are thinking, even though you don't know, unless they tell you in a movie. You can imagine what they're thinking. You can imagine what they're reacting. If they make a face, you can imagine, okay, you can think, okay, what did that face mean? How do I describe that face? You can add all of that in. You can add description of the scenery they're in. You can even expound upon it if you want. All right, so let's go ahead and go to the next slide, and I'm going to read how I fleshed out this scene. In the future, entertainment will be randomly generated, Larry declared. Bob frowned, unconvinced that this wasn't simply one of Larry's convoluted pranks. Randomly generated, he asked doubtfully. Randomly generated. What better way to achieve the unexpected? Larry leaned in and said, I've seen the future, Bob, and the future is autotainment. From the ceiling, the voiceover sang, The future is now, as Larry ushered Bob onto the white soundstage. Ignoring for the moment the vegetables strapped to the carousel-like contraption in the middle of the room, and the gourd at a desk off to one side. They hopped up to the news desk, where two non-vegetable sentients were seated. Larry evidently already knew them. Hi, Rusty. Hi, Ventrilomatic, he said in a chipper voice. Rusty, a little man with a matching little hat, waved stiffly. Hi, Larry. Hi, Bob, he said. Greetings, Ventrilomatic said. He was 3 times the size of his companion, and his voice was monotonal and gruff, like it was being produced by a computer that had come down with bronchitis of the speakers. Shocked, Bob said, Hey, those are robots. Affirmative, Ventrilomatic said. Larry was pleased that Bob was catching on. Not only that, he said in his I'm teaching Bob a fundamental truth that is bound to turn out to be false voice. But these guys represent the hosts of the future. Unlike us, their humor can be truly randomly generated. Right, guys? Bob turned his attention back to the robot hosts of the future. Ventrilomatic took a second and then said, Why did the chicken cross the road? Rusty tossed his arms in the air as he spoke. I don't know. Why did the chicken cross the road? Then Ventrilomatic did something Bob had not been expecting. He shuddered and shook for a second as loud calculating noises sounded from his speakers. There was a loud ding, and then he said with his customary lack of inflection, Weed eater. Bob boggled at the robots as a laugh track played on high. Larry couldn't be serious. They couldn't be serious. This had to be a prank. Now that's funny, Larry said, looking to Bob for his reaction. That doesn't make any sense, Bob spluttered. It's funny because it's unexpected, Larry said, once more using his teaching tone. Well, whatever happened to it's funny because it's true, Bob asked, feeling like he was verbally trying to catch hold of the breeze. Larry rolled his eyes at him, making Bob's metaphorical hackles rise. 2 + 2 = 4 is true, but not funny, he said. He looked to the robots for backup. Guys? Ventrilomatic picked the question up immediately and posed it to Rusty. What is the solution to the equation 2 + 2? Again, Rusty emphatically tossed his arms in the air as he spoke. I don't know. What does 2 + 2 equal? Ventrilomatic made his calculating noises, and then after the ding said, Weed Eater. Bob's mouth hung open in disbelief as the laugh track from on high played once more. Larry nodded at Bob like his point had been made. That's a good one. All right, so that's the end of the PowerPoint. So I hope you understand your homework now. So what you're going to do is you're going to find a clip from a TV show or movie that you think would be fun to recreate. You're going to transcribe it into the transcript of just the dialogue. And then you are going to take that transcript and you are going to write a scene. Make sure you focus on the punctuation and grammar of the dialogue, but do also be creative, have fun, fill in with what the characters are doing, what the characters are thinking. Make sure you choose one character to be the point of view character, the character whose thoughts and feelings we're experiencing along with them. It can be the main character of the scene, or you could choose another character who isn't focused on as much even in the movie or the TV show, if you want. I want you to take a second to think, which character did April focus on? What was the point of view? Who was the point of view character for the scene that she did, that I did? I hope you got that it was Bob. I focused on Bob's thoughts, his reactions, his feelings. He was the natural main character of this scene because he, like the audience, is getting things explained to him. It's his questions, his doubts that the audience should be reflecting and sympathizing with. And that is the end of the punctuating and formatting lesson for today. Thank you for joining us.